Good morning, everyone. Today I want to do a short tutorial on creating or designing a database in Microsoft Access. In our discussion so far, we have identified clearly the difference between a field and a record. And we have identified that when you are recording data on a particular topic, person, anything at all, because remember, we want to go back to our basic definition of a database, which is an organized collection of related data. When you have decided the pieces of data that you want to store about that thing, person, place, whatever, you have to identify those important pieces of data. So in this case, this short little clip, you see that the last name has been selected. You want to get the person's first name, you want to get their phone number. So each one of these, last name, first name, and phone number, are considered fields. And these are set up, these are called field names. As you start to put in data or information under each field, we then build what we call records. So in this short table here, you have 3 records. So when you have your fields, one of the main things when you design a database, you design a table. So you must identify the fields that you're going to place, and you develop field names for them, and then we can build the records. So when we looked at the tables that we want to put in our database, we came up with sales, products, and suppliers. And we said for each table, we must have that unique field that is going to uniquely identify each record. And we came up with our primary key. And we also talked about the tables having to be linked so that you don't have to repeat the information or the data and have the same data all over the place, but linking your table makes it more efficient. So by taking your primary key and placing it in another table, it becomes a foreign key in that table, but that foreign key allows you to make a link with your primary key, and that is how these 2 tables become linked. In the same way, supplier ID here has been placed as a foreign key in the product table, but you are now able to link the 2 tables. So if in the event you need any further information on suppliers, you simply just use the supplier ID from here to get the further information on their first name, last name, or whatever else you need. Now, when you put together the fields, if you look at these different types of data here, this is a name, this is a number, this is a checkbox that you have to tick yes or no, this is money, this is a date, so that every field will hold different types of data. So when we are designing our database, we have to be mindful that we have to indicate what type of data is this field holding. Is it going to hold a text with just name or characters from the keyboard? Is it only going to hold a number totally? Is it going to be yes or yes/no? Is it going to be currency? Is it going to be date/time? So we have to be able to identify what type of data is being held. So when you look at data type, and I will send this link for you, every field has properties. One of the most important is the data type, and a field's data type determines what kind of data it can store. So when we start opening and designing our tables, you are going to see a list of data types that you are going to have to choose from. Short text, long text, number. Now, number takes only numerical data. So for example, a phone number with a dash will not have the data type of number. It will have a data type of text. Date/time, of course, will take in dates. Then you have currency. Of course, auto number is there as well if you want the system to automatically put in the numbers for you. Yes/no, where you indicate whether it is yes or no, and it will come up on your data sheet as a box to tick, yes or no. So when you open Microsoft Access, this is the table, this is the interface that is going to open for you. And first and foremost, you click on blank database. Good. As we said before, 4 objects that you can create in Microsoft Access would be tables, forms, queries, and reports. But the first thing that you need to create is a table. Good. And automatically, they give you a table. They give you a table, but I want you to always just exit off because I want you to be able to design your own. Now you're not seeing my tabs here. Of course, it will drop down when I click on the tab. So with Microsoft Access, you have home, and when you click on home, you see all the different commands here that you could click on. When you click on create, you see that it has been grouped in terms of what you can design. You can have tables, you can do queries, you could do forms and reports. So the 4 objects that can be created, it's already laid out here for you. So one of the first things that we want to do, the order of creating or designing your database is important. The first thing that you do is you design your table, you create the relationships, and then you put in records. Always remember that. You design your database. You, in fact, let us go from before that. Before we even design that database, right? Design that table. So you look up database, right? And you open it. Sorry. You look up Access. You open it. And again, you see blank database. So making sure, so when you click on blank database, you get the option to give your database a name. All right, so we said the store was FASS Minimart, yeah? And you can decide where you want it to be located, right? So once you give your database a name, you then click on create. Again, as I said, they automatically give you a table, you click that off. And you go now to create, because the first thing we want to design is the table. We click on table design. And exactly the fields that we have identified before, it's now time for you to actually put in the field names here. So we had product ID, good, and we want to do like in our variable names in programming, we want to make sure we don't utilize spaces if it's more than one word, right? Product ID, product name, quantity, cost price, selling price, supplier ID. Good. It is now time for me to indicate. So product ID, I will leave it as number. Product name, of course, that's a text. Quantity, of course, will be a number. So when you have identified the field names, cost price, of course, will be currency. Selling price will be currency. Supplier ID, let's leave it as number as well, right? Good. So you have identified the field names, you have identified the data type. The description tells you more gives you further information about your fields, but we'll touch on description when we're face to face, okay? And one of the main things that you have to do now in your design tools when it comes up, we now need to identify which is our primary key. That is a must. So I click here, I click on design, I click on primary key, all right? So right now you're seeing that we have indicated that the primary key is product ID, all right? You click on save, and you can now give your table a name. We call this table products. And I click on OK. So now on the left-hand side of your screen, you will always see all the objects listed. So we have one table. And we do it again for our next table. So we have our table design. So we design our tables firstly, and then we do our records. We want to stay away from words like date and name because it's utilized in the database, right? So I put it as date sold rather than leaving date. Good. So sale ID, as I said, we'll leave all the IDs as number. Date sold, that is date/time. product ID, let's leave all the IDs as numbers. Cost price, of course, that will be currency, and total, that will be current. So it's essential that you, in this case, sale ID is our primary key. So key thing when you're designing your table, list the field names, state their data type, identify the primary key, you save the table, you give it a name. This one is sales. Okay. And we have to do this one more time. So you X off here and you go back to create table design and you go now to supplier ID. First name, last name or surname if you want to put it in, telephone, contact, email, and then address. Good. So supplier ID, we've identified all as number, first name text, telephone contact will remain as text because of that dash, email text, so all of this is text. We identify now our primary key. Good, and we are ready to go. We have design, yes, I forgot to save it. This will be supplier. Okay, so we now have all our tables designed. Do not enter any records yet because we need to go now in database tools and set our relationships. Why are relationships important? At this point, we want to make sure there's a link between the tables, right? So click on the table, click add, click on the next one, click add, click on the next one, and click add. Close this form so you could always just move them around. Good. Good. So when you look at it in terms of product ID, you want to link the primary key from one table to the foreign key in the other table. To do that, we hold down the left mouse button, carry it across, and if you realize your cursor is changing, as you release, the edit relationship box is going to come up. At this point, you see we're linking product ID to product ID. We want to click always and click enforce referential integrity. And you see that the relationship is one to many. So one product can be sold many times, right? And we'll go further into the relationship types when we see face-to-face, right? So you want to make sure and click this. What this does is that if I'm doing the sales table first, there's no way I could put in product ID here without product ID being done in the products table first. So it makes sure that it keeps everything clear and efficient running in your database, because you cannot have a product ID listed in sales that was not listed in the products table. So always click enforce referential integrity, create. So we see there's a one-to-many relationship. Good. So let's go now, supplier ID, hold down the left mouse button, carry it across to supplier ID, release, and make sure you're seeing the correct link, supplier ID to supplier ID, click enforce, click on create. So you now have your relationship set, you click on save, and you take this off. So at this point, you have your three tables. What we did before is we had our design of a table. When you double click this products table now, you see it came up in a data sheet view. You now have it where you have all your field names as column headings, and you could now start entering your records. So you have been shown the process of naming, opening Microsoft Access, giving your database a name, designing your tables, all your tables by setting your field names, your data type, and you have also been shown how to do the relationships. So your turn now, using the same table, sales, products, and suppliers. Go right ahead and get it done.